You're listening to the Bear in Mind podcast, episode number 17.
A podcast about love, color, and identity, and where driving yourself crazy is totally sane and curable. Now your host, T. Vias.
Today I'm back talking about boundaries, and I thought I was kind of done with the whole thing of boundaries. However, I had a very recent incident happen around boundaries where I actually reframed boundaries in my head again. And I figured something out in a clearer way. And I think that there's a huge difference between knowing something and then actually believing it, and then believing it enough where you can take action from it. So in episode number 7, called Boundaries for Beginners, I talk about a concept of boundaries that I learned in the last year, and it's people don't need to respect your boundaries, you need to uphold them. And so today I'm going to talk about what you're actually upholding and clear that up a little bit. And as in that episode, I'm also going to only be talking about personal boundaries, so nothing that's illegal, like physical and sexual assault. This is mostly about your personal boundaries, referring to your body and your mind. So let's tackle the truth about boundaries. I had a recent incident, and I was going to meet a friend at a cafe, so we scheduled this time. And I knew that after my first appointment, I would get to the cafe before her, and so I brought some stuff to work on, knowing I would be waiting for her to show up. And I was doing my work, and I ordered a cup of coffee. And then after I had done some stuff, I looked up at my watch, and I noticed it was the time that she was supposed to come, and she wasn't here, and it was no big deal. And then I did a little bit more work. I think I checked my emails or something, and I still didn't see her, and I looked at my phone to see if I had any messages, and there were no messages from her. And so now it was about 20 minutes after our agreed upon time, and she had confirmed the night before, so I was like, oh, maybe she's lost, or maybe something happened. And I went back to working on stuff because I had another appointment, so I wasn't going to leave the cafe yet. So I just thought, okay, if she's lost, she'll show up, she'll text me, and even if she's late, it'll be okay, and then I'll just leave when it's my appointment. And so I was at the cafe the whole time that we would have met, which would have been a couple hours, and then it was time for me to leave for my next appointment. I had thought about texting her or calling her to see what had happened, or if anything had happened. And I didn't do that. I decided, you know what, she confirmed the night before, so she, in my mind, was aware that we were meeting. And if something had happened, like a car accident or something like that, then a text from me is probably not the best thing to get in the middle of a crisis. I'm leaving the cafe, and then my phone rings, and it's her. And I pick up the phone, and she starts speaking. And she is a person that speaks quite quickly, but she's speaking even more quickly than her normal pace. And so I don't speak very quickly, and so I was finding it very difficult to understand her. And she started apologizing, and she had forgotten about our meeting. And I told her it was no big deal. I did work in the cafe, and then I had the appointment in the area. So in my mind, it was still okay. And then she kept apologizing, and to the point where she was now starting to berate herself a little bit, and I could totally understand that. And then she says to me, well, let's meet tomorrow, same time and in the same place. And I realized in that moment, I didn't have my agenda, but I knew that I had something on my agenda the rest of the week. And I said, well, I have something on my agenda for tomorrow. And then she's like, well, the next day. And then I said, well, I don't have my agenda with me at the moment, but I can get back to you on when we can meet up again. And so we said our goodbyes, and I headed out to my appointment. So then I finished up the appointment, went back home, and I looked at my agenda, and then I sent her a text of when possible dates that we can meet up again. So hearing this story from an outside perspective, it might be easier to see what was happening when it comes to the truth about boundaries. And in that moment, I didn't see it. I only saw it until I reflected on what happened afterwards. And at the same time this incident happened, I was working on learning how to be more productive with my time, and I'm still working on it. At that specific time, I was really making an effort to manage my agenda a lot better. And so I was doing kind of this weekly planning and mapping out all the things that I needed to do and manage my free time and other responsibilities that I had. And one of the things that I learned from doing this kind of planning ahead of time, whether it's a week or a month ahead of time, is that I'm actually making a decision about my time ahead of time. So I'm making a commitment on how to use my time before I actually reach that point. And when you look at what commitment actually means, and I'm looking at a definition from the dictionary online, it's the state or quality of being dedicated to a cause, activity, etc. And I actually think that this definition is terrible because it doesn't really fully embody what a commitment is. And to me, a commitment is making a decision ahead of time. And looking at it from this, it's true in anything that you make a commitment to. You want to work out 3 times a week. You want to say no to dessert. You are committed in a relationship. When you make a commitment to someone, you make a decision ahead of time that you are going to be committed in that relationship before you actually continue on in that relationship. And if you look at all of these types of commitments, whether it's going on a diet, working out, or your relationship, they're all about commitments having to do with your time. So if I had to rewrite the dictionary for commitment, I would write that it's a decision you make ahead of time about your time. So when I look back at that incident with my friend in the cafe, she had asked me to meet the next day and then the day after. And when I looked at my agenda when I got back home, I had stuff in there that could easily have been switched around. I had things like, okay, I wanted to exercise, or I had to do this planning, and they weren't actual appointments to somebody else. They were appointments to myself. So then when I offered her a time to meet, I offered her a time where I had free time, where I had uncommitted time available. I didn't go back and try to rearrange my schedule to meet her in the next few days where all of my time had already been committed. So really then the boundary becomes around my time. And a boundary then really becomes, and what I'll have to say is the truth about boundaries, is that it's a commitment you make to yourself and no one else. So when I go back and look at the fact that I need to uphold my boundaries in my life, what I'm really saying is I need to uphold a commitment to myself. And before this incident, I hadn't really looked at boundaries in this way, in the fact that it was really just honoring a commitment I had made to myself, in very much the same way you make a commitment to somebody else in a relationship. It is also those commitments that we make where no one else is even holding us accountable. And so the truth that I've learned about boundaries is boundaries upholding a commitment I made to myself. And that commitment was a decision I made ahead of time. I'll wrap it up here and I'll check back with you next week.
Thanks for listening. Listen for a new episode next Tuesday by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Bye for now.